Inflation is a general rise in the price level. Now, what that means is that all prices and all wages go up by about the same amount at the same time. Almost all the inflations we had in the 20th century were monetary inflations. And that means that the rise in the price level is caused by something the Federal Reserve does, putting more money into circulation, changing interest rates. But sometimes, like in the pandemic, we have some of the change in the price level coming from changes in scarcity. Like, for example, a lot of people stopped working in the beginning of the pandemic. Most of them have come back, but some of them haven't. So we have about 3 million people who are not working now who probably would have been working if we hadn't had a pandemic. And so we feel that in the price level because we have fewer people working to produce stuff. And then, of course, we have big changes in prices coming from the war in Ukraine because the Ukraine itself was a big exporter of grain. That grain isn't coming out now. And Russia, of course, is a big exporter of petroleum products, and those supplies are disrupted also. Consumers see inflation in the prices that they pay at the grocery store and for gasoline and all sorts of other things, but businesses see it in much the same way. The important additional category for businesses is wages, because the people that they employ are experiencing inflation too. Small businesses should be able to see inflation in their books. You've recorded what you've bought and how much you've paid for it, and so you should be able to look at what you pay now versus 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, and see inflation in your own series of prices. Generally speaking, the way a small business will manage inflation is by raising its own prices, because the rise in the price level is general, it's not specific to them, it's not their fault, and in order to stay in business, you must raise your own prices. The US government issues two kinds of bonds. There are the ordinary ones that we've been doing for 200 years, what are called just nominal bonds. They pay an interest rate. Then there's a very special set of bonds that are only about 30 years old that are adjusted for inflation. And so when we look at the interest rates on the bonds that are adjusted for inflation versus the ones that are not, our common ordinary garden variety bonds, that gives us a forecast of the rate of inflation. I think this period of inflation will actually be fairly short-lived. Looking at the bond market, and especially at the plain ordinary bonds versus the bonds that are adjusted for inflation, I believe that the rate of inflation will be much lower, down in the neighborhood of 4 or even under 4% a year from now, and 2 years from now it will be lower still.